Bridges are a testimony of the will of humankind to link those things which are separate. For thousands of years, the universal need of providing easy access to facilitate man's endeavor has led to overcoming incredible obstacles with ingenuity and engineering. The White River Bridge at DeValls Buff is a perfect example of the creative resourcefulness that characterizes the American spirit. In 1821, the development of a road was authorized connecting the cities of Memphis, Tennessee and Fort Smith, Arkansas via Little Rock. When U.S. Highway 70 was mapped in the early 1900s, the road between Memphis and Little Rock closely followed the original route. It did not, however, provide for a means to drive or walk across the White River. River crossings were made by ferry. Although a scenic way to travel, it was often inconvenient. Space was limited. Long waiting lines were common, and ferry crossings ended at sundown. Bad weather and high water prohibited passage entirely. People and commerce relied on the railroad to provide uninterrupted service from one point to the next. Nationally, the railroad companies had undertaken the building of thousands of miles of bridges. The Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad Company completed its first White River Bridge in 1871. This was the only bridge in the area for 50 years, until Harry E. Bovee paid a visit to DeValls Buff. A town of significant historical importance, DeValls Buff had long been the meeting point of river and overland traffic. While standing outside the Castleberry Hotel, Mr. Bovee heard the rumblings of disgruntled folks about the urgent need for a bridge spanning the White River. A bridge that would allow the average citizen, by wagon, on foot, or in a motor car, to get to the other side without major delays. The seed was planted, and this entrepreneur from Stuttgart began to dream. It is a tribute to Mr. Bovee that without funds or any foreknowledge of the enormity of his plan, he undertook the building of a toll bridge. The territorial legislature of Arkansas authorized the building and operation of toll bridges by private enterprise. All revenue went to the owner for a defined period of time. In 1906, the authority to bridge navigable water was removed from the states and vested in Congress. The White River, having more miles of deep water than any river in Arkansas, is highly navigable, and permission to bridge its waters rested with the federal Congress. Mr. Bovee received his act of Congress to build the bridge in November of 1921, and from the county government his franchise to charge a toll. The engineering firm of Harrington, Howard, and Ash of Kansas City, Missouri was contracted for the design work, and the Missouri Valley Bridge and Iron Company for the construction. The bond money was raised, and the magnificent steel and concrete vertical lift bridge began to materialize. The vertical lift bridge design is a variation of the medieval drawbridge. Construction began in January of 1924.
I had a cousin, same age as me, about 2 months difference in her age. And we was always looking for something to get into, just 7-year-old boys, you know. And we'd get off down there and the contractor run us off, run us back to the house. To a young boy, that it was amazing how they could go out there and pour concrete down in the middle of the river, and here comes a pier up out of the river, and they set a bridge on it. It just couldn't be done, you know, when you're that age.
Growing up, I knew that my grandpa Mathis was a master carpenter, but it wasn't until recently my mother told me that my grandpa had almost lost his life while working on the bridge. Where he was working at this particular time, the pilings had already been driven, and he was above that. He had a safety rope that was around his waist, and the other end was attached to the bridge. There was a man working with him that was to signal him and let him know when he needed to be careful and take a precaution, something was fixing to happen. We don't know if the man gave the wrong signal or failed to signal. And Grandpa said that one minute he was working and the next minute he was swinging through the air, and he swung with such force that when he landed on the ledge, he hit so hard that he could feel the rivets in his back.
On December 31, 1924, the bridge was completed for the total cost of $302,111. The new year of 1925 was ushered in with a day of celebration. All comers were invited to cross the bridge free of charge.
My father ran the ferry, and he was much disturbed because of losing his job when the bridge was completed.
People were awed by the spectacle of this impressive structure in action. The 3 Pratt trusses, built with riveted joints instead of the old-fashioned pin and hole method, measures 606 feet in total length. The center lift span weighs 200 tons and operates on 2 80-foot towers. It is suspended on these towers by 32-foot cables attached to 2 counterweights, whose combined weight is equal to that of the span. The draw is operated by gasoline motor or by hand crank. A total rise of 50 feet gives a clearance of 55 feet above the high water. The total weight of the steel structure, including machinery, is over 1 million pounds. The tolls were set at 5 cents per person or head of livestock and $1 for 6-horse carriages or automobiles. Return trips made within 24 hours were sold at a reduced rate. The bridge had changed hands several times by 1930 when the state of Arkansas bought it for $1 plus the obligation to pay back the bond notes. The Arkansas Highway Commission assessed the condition of the bridge and decided that the original timber approaches, which were underwater during the 1927 flood, needed to be rebuilt in concrete and the wood decking replaced. The firm of Peterson and Earnhardt of Montgomery, Alabama, won the bid for the job. Their request to use molded-in-place Raymond piles instead of the precast piles specified in the design was approved. Steel shells were driven into the ground by a steam hammer, and once in place, the concrete was poured into the shell. Octagonal concrete columns were connected to the pile above ground.
I, among others, were hired by Mr. Bob Youngman, who was in charge of pouring the concrete. He was the foreman. And so a long incline ramp was built. And at the foot of this ramp was a huge mixer that mixed the concrete, and it was dumped into wheelbarrows, and it pushed up this incline and dumped into forms in which reinforcement steel had been placed. It was a very hard job. So I think we were getting about $1.25 an hour. That was good wages then. You could get a sack of flour for 45 cents.
The contract stated that the new construction could not interfere with the traffic flow or collection of tolls. This proved to be one of the greatest challenges for the construction company.
July 10th, 1931. Dear Sir, the temporary approaches over your work are not being properly maintained. You admit this yourselves when you have all the passengers on the afternoon bus alight and walk over. We cannot have the state of Arkansas embarrassed by having the out-of-state passengers get out of the buses and walk over the unsafe bridge. Yours truly, E.P. Douglas, Resident Engineer.
Despite the problems with the temporary structures and the high water conditions, the approaches were completed by the end of 1931. Like stoic sentinels standing shoulder to shoulder, they have sustained over 60 years of traffic with few repairs. DeValls Buff became a stopping-off place for fuel and food. Small businesses sprang up on both sides of the river to meet the demand of the interstate travelers. The topic of conversation turned from how to cross the river to how to get rid of the high price of crossing the river, the toll. The collection of tolls throughout the state was a thorn in the side of its citizens. Many articles began to appear in the newspapers reflecting the general discontent. In 1940, after long heated arguments for and against the abolition of tolls, the toll bridges of Arkansas were open to free passage. Although the bridge no longer required a toll collector, the job of the bridge tender was still very much needed. At all hours of the day and night, the bridge had to lift its center span for river traffic to pass underneath. Several men have served in this position, climbing into the control house and riding up and down with the span. A Mr. Pate is the first recorded. Frank Kennedy held the job for over 20 years. "She's old," he's quoted as saying in 1967. "You've got to treat her like an old hen sitting on a nest." All the men have interesting stories to tell about the thrills and chills of bridge tending. One of the most harrowing experiences concerned the flooring. The deck of the bridge had been an ongoing maintenance problem. Because of the constant vibration of the spans, the nails in the wooden planks, then later the weldments of the steel planks, kept working loose, which caused the asphalt to crack. In 1960, a concrete flooring was installed to solve this problem. However, the weight of the center span was greater than the counterweights in the towers, and the span wouldn't hold in the lift position. The first time Mr. Kennedy took the span up, he reached the top and immediately started back down. By throwing the gear into forward, he was able to stop the descent. Unfortunately, all the cogs on the gear wheel were ground off in the process. When it was time to bring the span back down, he tried to put the gear in reverse, but the broken cogs wouldn't catch, and the 200-ton center section dropped 50 feet. The bridge held, although an observer said that the metal section had bowed deeply when it landed, then popped back into place. It was reported that Mr. Kennedy had to rest a spell following this experience. Steel gridwork replaced the concrete deck. This comparatively light material met the requirements of modern traffic but precluded any further use of mule and wagon. In 1972, after 43 years, the bridge was closed for major repairs to the original piers.
In February 1972, the flow of the river was extremely high. And as usual, over a period of time, the flow would undermine the pier foundation. The pier was founded on timber piling, and as it eroded, or in other words, scoured out or dug out underneath the pier, the water with sand in it tended to sandblast the timber piling. The timber piling were approximately 14-inch gum pile cut from out here in the woods, driven in the ground, and then as they were sandblasted, they reduced in size to about 6 or 8 inches, kind of an hourglass-shaped figure, and they gave way, permitting the pier to tilt.
The bridge remained inoperative for 22 months. This was extremely detrimental to the surrounding area.
Across the river, we had nice eating places. They'd closed down right away because, you know, people just didn't come over there. And the same thing happened to the people on this side. We had grocery stores, all kind of businesses here that just couldn't survive. That tells you what the bridge can do. But nobody wanted to put too much stock in coming back because it could do it again.
For 14 years after the bridge was reopened, road and river traffic flowed through the seasons. Barges bearing soybeans, grain, and timber moved up and down without untoward incident. The safety and free movement of river traffic have always been the concern of the federal government. Since 1967, the jurisdiction of bridges over navigable waters comes under the Department of Transportation, and specifically the United States Coast Guard.
We have to make sure that bridges provide for the reasonable needs of navigation. And in so doing so, we make sure that the piers are properly placed, that drawbridges operate properly, and that bridges are properly marked for navigation at night. Overall, there's around 56 people in the Coast Guard that do bridges. In St. Louis, the 2nd Coast Guard District, there's 6 people, and we oversee 21 states, 6,500 miles of river, and about 1,200 bridges.
The crafts that navigate the White River have changed over the past 70 years.
Years ago, when the DeValls Buff Bridge was first built, the navigation was a completely different type. You had more packet boats, you had single boats that carried all the commodities on the boat itself. Typical barges that operate on the White River and pretty much operate on the other river systems in Arkansas are 35 feet wide, 195 feet long, and when they're loaded with commodities, they weigh 1,500 tons. But when you put all these barges together at 1,500 tons per barge, moving downstream, it's quite a bunch of weight and momentum coming down that could do a lot of damage to bridges if they hit them.
Barges traveling downstream have difficulty maneuvering when the river is running high. As they make the curve and adjustment to safely pass under the railroad bridge, they must immediately adjust their angle to pass through the piers of the lift span bridge. Sometimes the swift current catches the barge in a sideways position and pushes it into the pier of the bridge. The bridge has sustained many minor hits, but the afternoon of January 7, 1988 is a special memory for Freddie Rogers and George Roberts.
We looked down, when we got the bridge up, we looked down the river and I told George that the barge was going to hit the bridge.
I looked at him and I said, Freddie, there is no way that those barges are going to hit the bridge. Well, between the railroad bridge and the highway bridge, they really got out of control. And that's when they hit the pier.
When it hit it, the counterweight started swaying, you know, backwards and forwards. Then the bridge got to going, you know, backwards and forward like it was going to fall in. So we was pretty scared. But he said, well, my daddy always told me if I got stuck up here, I could climb down. I said, George, it's ice on the bridge. You can't climb down now. And he started down. So I grabbed him around the neck and his waist and pulled him back up. I said, you're not going. He said, okay. Okay.
A lot of times from the top of the bridge, you have a real good view of the land. You know, you can almost, well, you can see the rice dryer in Hazen. And I got a good view that day. A long view. I got to even, you know, we got to see the sunset. Right.
This 1924 marvel of technology has served with distinction. The Pratt truss spans and the lift mechanisms are considered pure American bridge form, a treasure without a doubt that stands as a reminder of the pioneering spirit of this country. Unfortunately, it also stands on a very busy river and highway. The 18-wheelers of today far exceed the size and weight of the wagons and automobiles of yesteryear. Even the barges have grown in dimension. The bridge is dwarfed by the traffic it serves, and the safety of the people who use the bridge is now of great concern. As the ferry that once carried passengers, livestock, and vehicles bows to progress, so this bridge bows to the need for a larger, safer, more accessible structure. Today, the new DeValls Buff Bridge provides all of the modern safety and capacity features of the newest bridges in Arkansas. With the White River Vertical Lift Bridge rated functionally obsolete in the late 1980s, Arkansas State Highway and Transportation Department engineers determined it could no longer be repaired or modified to serve the needs of increasing roadway and river traffic. Demolition of the original bridge and new construction was the only economically feasible option. The department began this lengthy process with public safety and environmental sensitivity as top priorities. To begin removing the old bridge, the job contractor completed an environmental assessment prior to demolition to consider all potential impacts and ensure that procedures would meet or exceed federal laws. During the planning phase, migratory birds including swallows and phoebes were discovered nesting on the bridge. In compliance with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, demolition was postponed until the breeding cycle had passed. Department biologists closely monitored the situation and gave clearance to proceed once the birds left the nest. The Highway Department worked in tandem with the U.S. Coast Guard to coordinate barge traffic during the demolition process. Waterway traffic was halted for 24 hours during demolition, and roadway traffic was halted during the blast. In a two-phase operation, contractors used explosives to implode the bridge deck and piers in July 2004. The first detonation destroyed the lift span of the bridge. And the following detonation imploded the deck and piers. Debris from the bridge was cut into manageable pieces for removal, and the steel was purchased and reused by a salvage company. Before the demolition of the original bridge, the new structure was open to traffic on May 27, 2004. The total cost of the new structure was $16.7 million. The opening of the new bridge helped ensure economic stability in the local community, as well as the convenience of uninterrupted traffic flow. Although the new steel plate girder bridge does not have the charm and historical significance of the vertical lift bridge, its functionality is vastly superior. Improved safety is perhaps the best feature of the new bridge. It is more than 20 feet wider than the original, providing an adequate shoulder in case of emergencies. The new White River Bridge offers longer and higher spans, improving waterway clearances. Barge traffic can better maneuver between the piers, which greatly reduces the chances of accidents. The new structure is not only a safer bridge, but it is more economical as well. There are no load restrictions, so any transportation vehicle carrying a legal load can use the bridge. With no lift to raise or lower, such as with the previous bridge, barge and road traffic can run uninterrupted. The new design also requires less maintenance. The structure is built with weathering steel, which does not have to be repainted. Although the new bridge is a safer, more practical structure, it will never replace the splendor and memories of the original vertical lift bridge. Today, motorists traveling the new bridge may catch a glimpse of a city park marking the original bridge site on the east side of the river. The Arkansas Highway and Transportation Department has preserved the history and significance of the original structure in a visitor center located within the park. Visitors can now enjoy a picnic area and campground while revisiting the glory years of the DeValls Buff Vertical Lift Bridge.